Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study through the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We are in Exodus chapter 13, and this is the first day of the Israelites' freedom from slavery. And what is interesting about this story, they are now free. They have left Egypt, having watched God cripple the nation, dealing the final death blow to them. As they're leaving, they could see the Israelites burying their dead. And so as we kind of now move through, we're going to see there's one more thing God has planned for Egypt. We know it as the Red Sea. And so in their journey, we're also going to begin to get different. We're going to see how God is going to form the nation. Now, keep this in mind. It is estimate that anywhere from 1 million, maybe 2 million people exited Egypt. Could have been more. We saw before there was like 600,000 just soldiers. So it could have been, again, 2-3 million. This massive crowd exit out. They march out in front of Egypt, those who had been enslaved them. They also marched out with plunder. They plundered them. And as I said, this is sort of in my opinion, reparations. Okay, so if you want to really get into the reparation debate, to me with Christians, tell me how can you be against when a nation has wrong? Okay, now the difference between the American slavery and of course Egypt slavery is there was a spiritual element, meaning God. My point is, as far as justice is concerned, but again, I don't want to dive too much into that. But we see that they did march out. Okay. So they're getting ready as they're marching through. God is giving them, again, preliminary commands. We're going to also see how God will begin to form the nation. And that's going to be interesting because one of the first things that God is going to do is set up worship, then government. All right. So, chapter 13, verse 1 says, "The Lord spoke to Moses, consecrate every firstborn male to me, the firstborn from every womb among the Israelites, both male and domestic animal, is mine." Now, this is something that this consecration of the firstborn male will be for the priest, and they will this will later get changed to the tribe of Levi. Verse 3. Then Moses said to the people, "Remember this day when you come out of Egypt, out of the place of slavery. For the Lord brought you out of here by the strength of his hand. Nothing leavened is to be eaten. Today, in the month of Abit, you are leaving." Now, by the way, remember, this is their first month, like our January. So the very day that they left Egypt began their calendar year. Verse 5, "When the Lord brings you into the land of Canaan, Hittites, the Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites." We're going to see these names later on throughout the Old Testament, this section of the history here. He says, "But he swore to your fathers that he would give you a land flowing with milk and honey. You must carry out this ritual in this month, the Passover. For 7 days you must not eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there is to be a festival to the Lord. Unleavened bread is to be eaten for those 7 days." Now, is that nothing leavened may be found among you, and no yeast may be found among you in all of your territory. Kind of interesting. In other words, I don't know how they're stored. Like, because I'm thinking flour, right? A bag of flour. Do you throw out the flour in the cabinets? Okay. I'm just saying I don't know. But the idea is that they were to eat unleavened, and not only unleavened but bitter herbs to remind them what God has brought them from, the bitterness of it. Verse 8, on that day explain to your sons, this is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. Let it serve as a sign for you on your hand and a reminder on your forehead, so that the Lord's instruction may be in your mouth. For the Lord brought you out of Egypt with a strong hand. And one of the things you're going to see that the Lord is saying that he's constantly going to say to them that they should be doing is to teach the children. And let's say this, he did not say rely on children's church to teach the children. He says the parents were to teach the statutes of God. The parents were to teach the statute of God to their children. So one of the failures of any parent is not teaching and talking about the goodness of God, talking about the things of God. You young parents, one thing that you certainly should be doing is always talking about the goodness of Lord, the goodness of the Lord, teaching them his word. Verse 9, let it serve as a sign on your head, and a reminder on your forehead, so that the Lord's instructions may be in your mouth. For the Lord brought you out of Egypt with a strong hand. Keep this statute at its appointed time from year to year, when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to your fathers, and give it to you. You are to present to the Lord every firstborn male of the womb. All the firstborn offspring of the livestock you own that are males will be the Lord's. You must redeem every firstborn of the donkey with a flock animal. But if you do not redeem it, break its neck. However, you must redeem every firstborn among your sons. Now he's going to get more into that, especially when we get to the book of Leviticus. Okay, verse 14. I chuckle because Leviticus is going to be again. It's a very methodical book, listing the commands, what the priest is supposed to do. Verse 14. In the future, when your son asks you, what does this mean? Say to him, by the strength of the hand of the Lord brought us out of Egypt, out of the place of slavery. In other words, notice he said they were to always talk about this from generation to generation to generation. Verse 15. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed every firstborn male in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn man of the firstborn livestock. That is why I sacrifice to the Lord all the firstborn of the womb that are males, but I redeem all the firstborn of my sons. So let it be a sign on your head, on your hand, and a symbol on your forehead. For the Lord brought us out of Egypt by the strength of his hands. They will never forget. Now they will forget. That is the sad thing, is that they will forget, and everything that he is telling them right now, everything that he's telling them, they're going to forget. And that is the sad thing that we're going to see through as we move forward in this, that the unbelief of the Israelites will be unbelievable. The unbelief, right? Notice he's saying right here, constantly talk about. And what is interesting about this generation now, remember, that this generation as a whole will see great wonders by God, great wonders. And it's just amazing. All right. Verse 17, it says, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them along the road to the land of the Philistines, even though it was nearby, for God said the people will change their mind and return to Egypt if they face war. In other words, and this is a sad thing that it's going to be true of them, even though he is saying this. This short trip, in other words, he said it could have been a short trip, but as of now, he's training them. He's getting, there is a lot. There is a lot that has to be considered at this point why God is doing what he is doing. There is a lot. I want you to think about this now. 430 years of slavery. 430 years of trauma, abuse. 430 years. So now they're free. And don't think that it's just, well, the shackles are off. Yes, the chains were off, but there is an incredible amount of trauma that they still, the fear. Add to that what they have been conditioned, how damaged God's people were for 430 years. The paganism. And one of the reasons why God even did that to this first generation, the incredible amount of signs and wonders to try to break that trauma, that conditioning. And it still wouldn't from generation to generation. But it was important that as he's doing this now, to teach them the true and living God will care for them. That's why he's taking them through this route right here, on a slow route to the promised land. In other words, he said, if I just put them in the promised land, they would freak out. But as they move along, you're going to see God's patience, long suffering. But the idea was to condition them, to recondition them to really trust God. All right, so verse 17 again. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them along the road to the land of Philistines, even though it was nearby, for God said the people will change their mind and return to Egypt if they face war. So he led the people around towards the Red Sea along the road of the wilderness. And the Israelites left the land of Egypt in battle formation. So there was this big kind of crowd formation. Kind of in, you can say, marching rows. You can see how when you see armies march out. Verse 19, Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, because Joseph had made the Israelites swear a solemn oath, saying, God will certainly come to your aid, then you must take my bones with you. Now this is an act of faith on Joseph's part, right? Now think about this. And this is something that is worth considering. 430 years prior, Joseph, who was evilly treated by his brothers, right, sold into slavery, then wrongfully convicted and then jailed, became the prime minister, the ruler of Egypt under Pharaoh. His position was so powerful, Pharaoh said that no one could raise their hand or live except by your command. To God, to Joseph's wisdom, right? He prospered the land. He had exceedingly success in Egypt by God's hand. And you would think that he could say, you know what, life is now good for the rest of his life. About 13 years of his life with hardship. But about, I'm thinking what? I'm trying to get my math here. He was 30 years old when he entered Egypt. I mean, when he entered his position of rulership. And he lived until 110. So what is that, 70, 80 years right there, 80 years? You could think he could say, man, life is great. Life is wonderful. But in his heart, he always, and he never, ever, ever, ever forgot God's purpose and plan for his life. He never, ever, ever forgot what God was doing. He never, ever, ever forgot who he was in God's plan. He was a Hebrew. And after all of that, the one thing he said was, hey, the time is going to come. Take my bones out of here. This man had great success. Why would he want to take his bones out? Because he never forgot that. He never forgot who he was. And he said, take my bones out. And now we see this coming to pass where they are taking the bones of Joseph, carrying them with them. Okay? This was a fulfillment of faith by Joseph, who had been dead for 430 years. Alright, verse 20 says, they set out from Succoth and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. The Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to lead them on their way during the day, and in a pillar of fire to give them light at night, so that they could travel day or night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night never left its place in front of the people. Now we're going to see that next time, especially again, just like wow, right? They see this, the true and living God. This generation of Israel, like any other generation, saw more of the signs and wonders of God. Think about that. They saw more than the signs and wonders in any other generation. And yet you're going to see how much they will fail in their sinfulness. That will be the most amazing thing. All right, guys. Chapter 14 in our next study. I will see you then.